Good morning, good morning, good morning. My projected trades fans, how's everybody doing? One sec. Make sure I get everything set up right. Darn it, where's the button I'm looking for? There it is. All right, here we go. Sorry, now we got things set up right. All right, good morning, folks. Sorry, it's been a little while since we've done a prep. Had to get things set up. And apologies for not getting the evening prep last night. Was just having too much fun with the kids outside in the snow all day. Didn't want to break away to go do work, so. But either way, let's check in where we're at. We're going to start with looking at ES. And I'm going to kind of focus on the daily over here. We had a strong November after the election. Carried into December for that Santa rally. And since that point, we've had a steady correction, a sell-off. You can see that we had a big drop before the end of the year, little bounces up, rejecting daily averages, back down for what appeared to be a double bottom, back up to the daily 50 and near the top of that wedge, and then right back down. And now we're breaking this minor flag wedge to the downside, starting on Friday and continuing today. Let's real quick take a look at our economic calendar just to see that this week we do have PPI and CPI that are happening Tuesday and Wednesday, and our jobless claims every Thursday. So going to be an interesting week with CPI and PPI. And let's go ahead and take a look at our earnings calendar just to show we've got a very busy rest of January and into February with big tech names coming up in February. So it looks like a lot of banks the rest of are coming up this week. And then starting Netflix next week, we have Netflix that usually kicks off the beginning of big tech names. Looks like not much other big tech names in next week. But then when we get into the last week of January, we're looking at Meta, Microsoft, IBM, Tesla, Lam Research, Apple, Intel, and the list goes on. Starting off February with some PayPal, Chipotle, Spotify, Snap. Snap's always interesting to watch for ad companies. Lilly. And yeah, that's about it. After we get through the big tech names, yeah, we've got some interesting follow-ups, but next couple of weeks going to be very big for earnings season. So coming back in here, ES is getting to the bottom of a 2-day squeeze and getting back to the last bounce point before the election rally. We zoom out just a little. We've been on a steady uptrend. In August was the last time that we hit our daily 200. Flagged a little more and then started to climb for that rally to end the year. Now we're coming back and we're testing that bounce point from the election. So we could see some consolidation here over the next couple of days at some key support areas and key levels. Could see some consolidation at the bottom of that 2-day squeeze, bottom of a 4-hour squeeze, And I'm sure if we sit here for a day or so, we'll get a daily squeeze as well, and that'll lead us into PPI and CPI. Should we start to lose this support, we bounced back here. It was also the highs right before we broke out. So if we start to lose that support, then we are going to spell a trip back down to the daily 200, which is catching up to the support zone. And if we go below that, the next support zone down at 56.43. But let's see if we consolidate here. Our 200 comes up, we give it a slap, and then we try to rally back and break this trend line to keep flying for the new year. Or if we're going to consolidate in this range, or break our 200 and dip a little lower. But keep that theme in mind as we progress through our names. I'm going to go ahead and just connect these real quick to make it easier as we go through each. Going on to NQ. And I know that we're coming up on the bell. I plan to continue to prep into open and kind of view the day and see where we could be going. You know, everything is looking a little weak into open. We're rejecting VWAP and whatnot, but all we need to do is hold our overnight lows long enough, and then we'll get a bounce back up, or we can break our lows and head down to, let's say, the next daily Keltner, which sits just a little bit lower for NQ, and I can confidently say for ES, because we're almost down to the second daily Keltner. I can tell because this is my Keltner column in my watch list. So, NQ down at the bottom of a 2-day squeeze as well. Let's see if we can hold and start to consolidate. Let's see if we slip, get down to that second daily Keltner. Oh, sorry, that is a daily squeeze. This 2-day squeeze is down lower. And third Keltner would be down near 20,167. And usually third Keltner is starting to be oversold. So, oh, it's also right about where the daily 200 sits. So, can we hold previous bounce points from the election area? Are we going to lose it and get down to the daily 200 and down to that third Keltner to signal being oversold before we get a bounce? That's kind of going to be the theme as we look at each one of these. Are they going to sell us down for a dramatic bounce and hit key moving average like the 200, key oversold signal like the third Keltner before heading back up? If we can hold here today and get back through VWAP and some of these pre-market highs, then it's just a goal to get back up to the daily 50 where we rejected on Friday. But the ship may have already set sail, and we might just need to jump on and hold on till we get to a lower level. Let's see if we consolidate, hold overnight low, maybe slip it for a second and bounce. You know, remember, we've had a lot of consolidation days, and then we get a mover, right? Moving on, let's check out Ready. Whoop. Man, I hate that feature. It didn't used to be that if you clicked on last, you got an order that popped up. Lovely little changes. Oh, the Ready is already kind of signaling a potential forecast. It's already slipped its daily 200, looking a little weaker, but it's small caps. It's not surprising. They rotate out of that a little harder, bring it back down to reality. So, we are down at our daily 200 for, at or near the daily 200 for Ready. Let's see if we're going to try to hold around there and consolidate. If we sell any further, we'd be talking these bounce points around 2100 and 2050, right? Moving on to YM. It's like I trained my brain to get used to clicking on last because it didn't do anything. YM also already made it down to its daily 200. So one thing to think about is we've got big tech coming up in a couple of weeks, right? Week or so. what was it? 2 weeks. So big tip coming up in 2 weeks. And we got a lot of names that might fall more in your YM bucket, right? Or your small caps bucket. So they've sold off small caps and YM down to the daily 200. We could start to see a consolidation, a hold, and some rotation into YM and ready, while NQ and ES actually can drift down further to their 200. So we might see some interesting rotation this week, especially with PPI and CPI. We can get those reactions, heavy rotation, where some things are moving like YM and ready, while NQ is falling. So definitely something to keep in mind this week is rotation into things that have earnings over the next 2 weeks, while they let NQ drop and sit and consolidate and then do an earnings run up. And as you can see, YM set a pre-market low, already starting to get through some of those overnight highs. So they're already starting to rotate into YM. Let's see if it breaks out of this little 30-minute squeeze and continues. Moving on. Let's see. Some big names. Apple. Earning coming up in a couple of weeks. No lower time frame squeezes to speak of right now because we had this big push up and a slow drift back. We only had some consolidation, let's see, last week in this area, but then we broke it Friday and we're breaking lower right now. Let's see if we can hold around this 230, 231.5. We lose that. We could be heading down to 227.78, next big key level. But we are also, I think, getting down near, third Keltner sits around 230. So we could see a smack of 230 and a hold there, since that's getting oversold, and some consolidation back up to the daily 50. Moving on, AMD. And I'm going to hit all the names. It's been a long time since we've prepped. It was a struggle getting the prep all set up and everything because it's been a while. AMD, another big push up and a pretty dramatic drop back. I'm curious. I want to take a quick look at MU. Forgive my ignorance. I just want to see when they reported and the reaction to see if it's affecting chips. And usually MU kicks off chips earnings a couple of weeks before any other chips start to. Alright, so MU gap down on earnings, consolidated, did not shoot lower, and then shot right back up. MU's a funky one. It doesn't trade the best, but it's just kind of an indicator. Negative reaction on earnings. It is below its daily 200. Yeah, it's going to mess around and try to fill this gap probably before any kind of bounce, but could be an interesting sympathy play as the other chips start to report. Back to AMD. Sorry. Always just like to check in over there. Negative reaction. And then messing around to fill the gap. So chips was a big part of what they unloaded last week. It looks like it actually kind of kicked off Tuesday and just went through the whole week, whereas we saw like Apple consolidated all week sideways and then dropped. So back down to the bottom of a daily squeeze, right near a key 114.5. Let's see if we can hold there on AMD. Try to make a bounce back up to 120, back up to some of these daily moving averages at 122.5, 125. If we start to lose pre-market low, you'd be targeting down to 110, 111, 110, where the third daily Keltner sits. Amazon. Looks like we got a daily squeeze and a 30-minute squeeze in place on Amazon. Probably going to be down near the bottom of the daily squeeze. 30-minute squeeze kind of thin. Looking a little strong to start pre-market got a good bounce up to some overnight highs. Let's see if it's going to continue to reject those overnight highs and consolidate. See if it wants to test overnight low. Daily 50 sits at 214.5. Third Keltner down at 211.5 if we were to lose that daily 50. But now that we're here, let's see if we consolidate. And it could just be setting up a hold of the daily 50, bottom of a daily squeeze. It's a couple of weeks before earnings. We could start to sit here and bounce. Moving on, we'll look at Google. "30-minute squeeze, 4-hour squeeze, daily squeeze starting to form." Google way up in a flag above previous highs. And yeah, looks like just complete flag. Starting to move into a daily squeeze. Let's see if we start to get to the bottom of that daily squeeze. Yep, it's looking weak pre-market, selling down. Get to the bottom of this daily squeeze and the daily 50, which has got caught up to a key level at 181.22. So let's see if we want to dip down, slap all that, and then consolidate back up in the daily squeeze. Any further below 181.2, second Keltner at 180, third Keltner at 175. But yeah, let's just see if that flag continues to hold. We can dip down and hit that 50 and be right back up in the flag consolidating. We could consolidate for a while before making it down to that 180, just so that we're hitting that daily Ichimoku for a bounce as well. So let's see if it continues to flag. Do we want to cover IWM? It'll be the same as Ready, so we know what's going on there. Let's go into Lilly, because we do have earnings coming up. What is it, next week? Or the week... Oh, no, the week after Tech, so we've got a few weeks on Lilly. Consolidating below its Ichimoku and daily moving averages in a daily squeeze, in a little bit of an uptrend, rejecting that daily squeeze top pre-market. Let's see if it tries to hold these daily moving averages and keep at the top of that daily squeeze. If we start to lose these moving averages and lose 780, then it could be back down to the bottom of the daily squeeze to consolidate before earnings. Moving on to Meta. Ooh, down 2.5% already on the day. Probably selling off with Google right now. Yep, and testing Friday's low. Interesting that it did get a pretty strong bounce on Friday. And yeah, in a wide daily squeeze with all of our daily moving averages in a flag. So it could be just time for Facebook to consolidate before earnings. Wouldn't be surprised, though, if it's one of those culprits that drags NQ down to its daily 200. If Meta were to lose this flag and the daily 50, it's going to dip down to this shelf at the bottom of this daily Ichimoku at 550, the last bounce point from back in November. So we could see a dip to break that flag, consolidate a little bit, and then pop back up. We could stay up here at the daily 50 and in this daily squeeze into earnings. Microsoft. Only down 0.5%. Trying to hold these lows around 415, pre-market low 413.5. Looking like it wants to continue to hold and bounce. Let's see if it can get back up to 420, 423, where we rejected on Friday, near the daily 8, and daily moving averages further up. If we lose 412.5, we do have a sliver of a 2-day squeeze down here at 410. And the third Keltner to the downside at 404.5. But Microsoft in a wide consolidation range, over the last since August. Hasn't got back up to that all-time high up there. So This one just could be sitting, but let's see if it can kind of hold this range from 400 up to 410 where we found a lot of support. Moving on, Netflix up a little bit. Looks like it's dipped down into its daily Ichimoku, rejected the daily 50 on Friday, and broke its daily squeeze down. It is getting down near that third Keltner and 825, so a good spot for a bounce. Needs to get through 850 where we rejected on Friday, and back up to these daily moving averages north of 860. But yeah, Netflix coming up sooner. Is it next week? Yes, on Tuesday. So a great spot to consolidate and potentially take some longs back up to Ichimoku top and back up to the bottom of this consolidation flag. Or if we have a negative reaction on earnings, down to the bottom of this Ichimoku 800. That's about it for right now. But Netflix, a powerhouse, trying to get up to that 1,000 mark, man. I've been trading this thing since way, way, way back. Let's see, NVIDIA. Man, NVIDIA still loves to move. Look at all that. Ran up to 153, right back down to this 130 where we have seen a lot of consolidation post-split. And yeah, very interesting fib range that we've been trading in. So let's see if we continue to hold around 125.5 at the lows, where the bottom of these daily 2-day squeezes sit. Let's see if we can hold there and continue to bounce back up and consolidate. NVIDIA's earnings are going to be further out. They might not even be on the calendar over here. Let's see when it says. There, 226. So yeah, we're a good distance away from NVIDIA's earnings. If we lose that 125.5, daily 200 is around 119.5, and we haven't touched the daily 200 in a long, long, long time. So, let us see if we can continue to hold at 125.5. Dip down to daily squeeze bottom because we are getting this gap down. So we could just run down and slap it before coming back to fill the gap. We'll have to see. Let's see. We'll go on to. I'll just check in on SPX for the heck of it. And yeah, I skipped IWM and QQQ and SPY. I might skip just because we hit the big indexes. I can always go back. Yeah, it looks like interesting. You always got to be careful on these gap ups on SPX. We got that one on Monday, and then just down the rest of the week. We are at the bottom of a 2-day, 1-day squeeze. Oh, sorry, we gapped below the 2-day, 1-day squeeze. We are at the second Keltner down. Wouldn't be surprised for a bounce to try to fill the gap to consolidate at the bottom of that squeeze. Should we reject any kind of half gap fill, which would be around like 58.05, then we'd be looking for a hold of the 57.80 second Keltner. Should we lose that and that low of day, then we could be looking at a gap and go down to the third Keltner, 57.01, which would get that oversold range. Let's look on the daily, gapping through the Ichimoku cloud. Daily 200 down at 55.75-ish. Next big key level 56.27 and 57.05 where we bounced last time we tested the 50. But, I mean, note the trend. We're above the daily moving averages, running. Now we're below daily moving averages, rejecting. We could continue to reject till we hit the next one that's lower to bounce back. So get ready, folks. Could be interesting with CPI and PPI this week. Could see some dramatic moves down and back up, or we could just pop back up and consolidate before any dramatic moves. We'll have to see. Take a look at SPY, Tesla, VIX. We'll close this out. I'll hit QQQ before I continue to Tesla. SPY. Down there, key psych level 575. At the bottom of that 1 day squeeze. At that second Keltner, let's see if we can hold 575 and try to get back up to 580, 585. But if we roll over and lose 575, you'd be targeting down to 570, 568, where that third Keltner sits. QQQ, I said I'd pop back up to, and then we'll go to Tesla and VIX to close it out. QQQ at the psych level 500. See if we can hold that pre-market low. If we start to lose that, and the second Keltner near 498-ish. It's down to the bottom of the 2-day squeeze at 496, 495. Third Keltner sits down at 490. But if we can hold 500 and get a bounce, looking to get back up above some pre-market highs is near 503. 505, 510, where we rejected on Friday. So let's see if we can hold daily squeeze bottoms, second Keltner, and bounce, or if they're just going to dramatically get it down to third Keltner before we bounce. We're also at the bottom of the daily Ichimoku on a gap down, so we could hold, fill the gap before fully falling out. That daily 200 way below. So let's see if Tech wants to hold up daily Ichimoku and stay up in this flag. That's already breaking, obviously, but moving on. Tesla, I think, was next. Tesla been on a tear. This crazy run up since November. I don't know. I think investors are giddy about Elon getting so involved in politics. We've slowly come back down to our daily 50 almost, which sits down near 367. So let's see if we can get back above 390 and try to get back to the top of this consolidation from last week to get back to our daily moving averages above, or if we start to lose 380, Friday's low at 377.5, and previous low here at 373, then we could get down to 370, 367.5, that daily 50 for a bounce. But, wide consolidation range with this dramatic sell, pop back, and now they're just drifting it, right? So let's see if they get down near the bottom, buyers step back in, and they rally, or if they push through those lows, slap something else, and then rip it right back up. If we do lose that daily 50, that daily Ichimoku sits much lower, 335, yada yada, and kind of our last bounce points before that rally. Well, I should say last bounce points in this flag in November before the December rally. So, moving on, VIX, and we'll close this out. VIX clearly fired its squeezes and heading up almost to 22.5, high of 2204. On this gap up on VIX with the gap down on the market. Let's see if it tries to hold above 21 and rally up to that 22.5, top of the 2-day squeeze near 22.80. And overall, like dramatic level up is this 23.33 to watch. We start to lose that 21, then we're looking at gap fills or, half gap fills. Wouldn't be surprised for a little dip down near 20 and then a bounce up. But as you can see, we got above our daily moving averages, held them, and then broke this daily squeeze to the upside. So let's see if there's going to be momentum and volatility that carries, or if it starts to peter out when we see rotation into things like YM and Ruddy. Out of curiosity, now YM's up a little bit on the day. So let's just check in there real quick for the heck of it. Ruddy's still down a little on the day, but not as much as like in Q. So yeah, there you go. Some rotation into YM like I was talking about. And when YM leads, tech can sit for a minute as they rotate around. Let's see if Ruddy's also getting above pre-market highs and trying to rally. Obviously, it had a decent gap down, almost 1%. But since open, it is trying to push a little bit. Little. But that'll be it for prep. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll try to get back on a regular schedule here. We'll likely plan for morning preps. They might be some days at 7:30. There might be some days like we did today, 9:15 into open, right? But overall, we're going to try to get back on a regular schedule, try to help folks out here, try to offer up some trade ideas. We'll check back in on ES here real quick with my intraday set. Come on. Ooh, drag these down. There we go. Oh, this one always takes a second to load. Keep an eye on this Friday low around 48, 45-ish. Could be a key area of resistance if we start to push through this pre-market high at 58.32. Here we go. Now we're looking at our base levels. So, as you can see, overnight, rejected open, rejected near our buy zone. Oh, yeah, there we go. Rejected near our buy zone. And we made it, oh gosh, come on. And we made it down to our destination buy zone, where buyers picked it up a couple of times, rejecting VWAP, hit that buy zone one more time, and this key support zone. And we got a nice bounce forming. Let's see, boom, if we can continue to push up, get through some of these pre-market highs, continue up to 58.39, 58.40, where that midline sits to the downside. And if we can get above that, back to some of these highs, 48, 47.5, 48.50. Ooh, nice push here on ES. So like this is what we look for, guys, when we open, and we've got increased volatility, or increased volatility and volume is what I was going for. We get a little bounce, we reject our holes, back down, still hitting key supports and bouncing, get through our holes, come back to test them for another bounce, and we're pushing. We just got through some of those highs for a second, a little rejection because there's going to be orders sitting there. So let's see if we can push through, turn it into support, and continue higher, or if we've just topped out for the morning, and if we're going to come back and consolidate, right? But that's it for prep, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck today, and I'll see everybody in the chat.